Partzilla.com, and thanks for stepping in and joining us on this Friday afternoon. John is literally off to the races this weekend, so he's not be joining us, but I'm here to answer any kind of questions you guys may have. I'll try to do my best. Anyways, I'll start the stream off with a couple of questions from the last stream. I'll start off with Cody Witt. He says, I've been having a problem at the very bottom of his carburetor. He says there's a little hole where overflow goes and gas constantly leaks out. If I turn the screw to stop it, my ATV won't start at all. I need some direction here where I need to start looking at to get this thing fixed. Thanks. Well, Cody, if it's constantly leaking gas out of the carburetor, my first thought is you got a stuck float bowl, and when you tighten in that overflow, the overflow valve, it basically cuts off the fuel to the carburetor and floods it. So your first step would be to take off the carburetor and check the float seat and valve, and go ahead and give it a good rebuild while you're in there. That's more than likely what's going to fix your problem. Let's see, got another question from Chrissy Gregg. So I watched your ATV won't start video and it helped a lot, but I've tested the solenoid and it seems fine, but when I turn the key the solenoid vibrates, but the engine won't turn over. I tested the starter and that seemed okay. Any suggestions? Well, Chrissy, you say that the solenoid buzzes, that's usually not what you want to hear. It wants to make a really hard click. So if you're hearing a buzz sound whenever you turn the key over, there's a good chance that it could be the solenoid that's the problem. Let's see, next question. All right, question from 12K Peso. It says, how do you know when the four-wheeler is going to blow up? Because I want to buy a used one. Well, the only real way to tell if an engine is about, the life cycle of an engine is by doing a compression test on it. So if you've got one laying around and you know somebody that has one, I think we have a video on YouTube showing how to do a compression test. That's your best bet when buying a used engine, because that's going to tell you how it's been ridden and how much life's left on it. Let's see. I'm going to let a few more build up in here, and we'll start. All right. Let's see. All right, got one from Riverstrad. It says, how does oil get into the intake? It says, I bought a brand new 2019 YXZ 1000. I upgraded the K&N secondary oil filter. When I replaced it, it only had 5 miles on it, but it had oil in the tank, oil in the intake. Why and how does that happen? Well, I know on the YXZs, they're really sensitive to overfilling the engine because the oil sump actually has a line that reads directly to the intake. So your first thing you want to check on that is to see if it's overfilled with oil. I want to say it's only like a couple ounces over, and it will spill out to the intake. Let's see, let's go. All right, from Alonzo Gonzalez. It says, I have a 2002 Grizzly 660. Every time I try to start it, it makes a grinding noise. I just changed the starter. Well, Elizondo, on those Grizzlies, I know the starter actually goes into a one-way gear that spins on the flywheel. If you're making a grinding noise and you've already replaced the starter, chances are it's that one-way gear that you need to replace. We got Bubba. It says, what's good from San Bernardino? What's up, Bubba? From Georgia. Let's see. Jack Reacher says, where's the rest of the Grom big bore 170cc 4-valve build? I'll have to ask our guys I think everything we have on that unit is up on our channel. Get my guys to get you some links to those videos.
Audio issues. Apparently, the mic is popping.
Mic's popping.
Maybe a loose wire.
I don't know. Let me check. Let's see. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of audio issues here. Let's see. see, you got a Jason Stevens that says, on my 96 Honda Foreman, what could cause me to have to use starting fluid to get it to start? I have to let it sit 4 or 5 days. If I have to let it sit 4 or 5 days. Chances are, depending on how much time's on the engine, it could be low compression cause an engine hard to start. But more than likely, it's that idle circuit that's causing an issue on it. So it's that anytime an older carbureted unit doesn't or has a hard problem starting, you know, you go through your fuel, fire, and air, and just narrow it down. Chances are it could be kind of older gas too. So try flushing your fuel system and cleaning out your carburetor, and that should fix your problem. Let's see. Huh? Unless there's a phone in this toolbox. Let's see. Sorry about this. So got a Wendino says front fenders for Suzuki C50 motorcycle. If you could tell us the year on that, we can probably get some of our guys to send you some links from the website to that. Let's see. Let's see. Got a message from Trenton Croft. He says, can I check my valve, I'm assuming clearances, with the cam chain off, or to put the cams in time? Usually to check your valve clearances, you want the engine to be completely cold, and you'll need to have it set to top dead center on the intake side, and then when you go over to the exhaust side, you need to make sure it's at top dead center on each bank of the engine, and that's the best way to check your clearances there. All right, from Trenton again, he says, I have a KFX 450R. Jim and the valves can take the cam chain off. Okay. Question. All right, from Tara says, what can I do to help my Kawasaki Prayer 650 ride better? Right now, it rides like a horse and buggy and is a little hard on the back. Mind you, it isn't independent rear. I know one simple thing that you can do to an ATV is, believe it or not, check your tire pressure. If you've got a lot of pressure in the tires, it will transfer all that energy directly to you. But as far as like changing the way that it rides from the factory, there's not real much you can do unless you want to spend extra money on, you know, aftermarket shots and struts. That's really up to you. Or you could try getting a little bit comfier seat. But other than that, there's not really much else you can do to it. Marco, he says, do I have a rich carb mix if I move the needle up one? Really depends on it really depends on what your spark plug looks like. I mean, how is the unit running with you moving that needle set up one notch? Because I know like differences in altitude and humidity can change that kind of stuff. But it's usually a good idea to refer to the manual when it comes to things like that. It'll give you a pretty good baseline on where to set the needle to. Let's see. Got a question from Laughing Dog. He says, any tips for people who want to tackle the electronics on motorbikes? I want to get into it, but I'm worried. Really, the only way to get into it is just dive in face first and just start doing you some research online and finding out exactly how certain circuits work. A lot of times you can find a wiring diagram for any model just by a simple Google search. And it really just starts out with, studying those diagrams, because you can pretty much find out how the whole electrical system works and break it down by just finding those diagrams. Question from Bubba says, when replacing my fork seals, I've heard using different weight oil because I'm 300 pounds, but wouldn't that blow my seals out faster? Some people do recommend, changing the weight of oil, but really the best way to change it is judge it, by changing the spring, not spring height, but the heavier weighted spring. But you can slow it down just a little bit with a heavier weight oil, but it's a lot better to just change the springs themselves. From Dario, it says, hi, what do you think about a Yamaha YFZ R125? I'm not really sure what your question is there, Dario. Are you asking, like, how about putting a big bore kit on it? Like, what exactly are you meaning on that question? You just get back with me. Waiting for a few more questions to roll in. Question from last week I can look. Here's another one from last week. It's from Brian Klaus. He says, I have a delayed starting problem on a 2011 Polaris 800 Ranger. It happens when I turn the key on and let the fuel pump charge. And when I step on the brake pedal and turn the key, we have engagement, then a hesitation before it actually starts. I've changed the safety switch, the starter, the switch starter. What am I missing, or what have I done wrong? Sounds like you've really touched all the bases there on that, but it could be, is it the OEM battery that's in the unit? Because I know you put a battery in there with a lower cold cranking amperage, it can actually do that. It depends on if the starter kind of lulls, like, whoa, or does it just spin? Does it turn over for, like it normally does and then fire off? Or is it like a really slow start and then speed up again? Because if that's the case, it could be just a bad battery. It's got enough voltage to start the system, but not enough amperage to get it off the gate real quickly. There we go. Oh, okay. What do I think of a okay. What do I think of a YFZ R125 2008? I'm not really familiar with the YFZ R125. I'm more familiar with the two-stroke models, but honestly, Yamaha makes a really good motorcycle. That's what I've ridden pretty much, since I started riding was Yamaha. Then I swapped over to Kawasaki. But as long as it's been been taken care of in good shape, you can't go wrong with it. And it also depends on your skill level as well. From Trenton Croft, he says, how are the ProX pistons I got from my KFX 450? I haven't put it in. What's your thoughts on it? The ProX, they make good stuff. I'm familiar with a couple of them. I actually have a Suzuki DRZ 400 that I'm actually considering going with a big bore, and they actually make a piston to fit it. And that's actually the direction I'm going to go, is with ProX this time. I mainly use Athena and Piston Works, I believe is the name of the company. But I've heard lots of good stuff about ProX, and browsing through the forums, you can usually find a lot of that good information yourself as well. Let's see. Quality. Waiting for a couple more questions to roll in. Says, okay, got another one for Daria. It says, I had one Aprilia RS125 two-stroke with a Rotax 122 engine, very strong and very aggressive. Yeah, those Rotax engines, they're pretty good stuff, but in my opinion, you can't ever beat the power of a two-stroke. I just love that sudden hit of energy over the four-stroke stuff. More questions? Sorry, it's kind of slow today. Sorry, it's kind of slow today. Okay. All right, from Laughing Dog, it says, what's the best way to remove bearings? I've heard heating it helps to loosen them. Yes, it does help. It helps a good bit, but you also want to make sure you don't put too much heat on them, especially like with aluminum case, because when you heat it up and you jar it in, you could just snap off pieces of that cast aluminum. So as you do heat it, do it slowly and evenly, and just, gradually increase the temperature of it, and it will help loosen them out. And also the proper bearing removal kit helps too, making sure you've got the right diameter die, or whatever you want to call it, that matches the size of the bearing. Because if you got one that's too big, you're going to hit the crankcase or whatever surface that it's mounted to. And if it's too small, you could risk punching through the bearing. So just make proper tools and a little heat, and you can just about get anything done. All right. Afish, this is it safe to use an impact wrench to take off a lock nut on my rear axle? Yeah, with an impact wrench, removing stuff is always, it's always good to use an impact because it can't really damage it that much. But where you got to take a lot of caution is whenever you go to put the bolt back on using an impact. And depending on the impact wrench you have, some of them 400 or 500 foot-pounds. And if you just run it on down, you can definitely either strip the threads out or completely shear off the bolt. But it's usually with stuff like that, like bolts that attach the wheels to everything, really important parts, it's always a really good idea to use a good torque wrench. Definitely on that. Because I wouldn't want to over tighten it and then, my wheel fall off going 40 miles an hour. That wouldn't be a good day. All right, let's see. From JSA Videos, it says, what's the best way to handle a water-flooded ATV? That's a good question. The first thing that I would do personally is when I flood, get it out of the water hole to start with. The second thing would be to pull the airbox cover and remove the air filter. Check inside of there if there's any water, try to pump it out, or get the water out of the airbox. And then the second thing you need to do before you start the engine up, and this is very important, you want to remove the spark plug. Just pull the boot off the spark plug, or both spark plugs, depending on what model you have. But remove the spark plugs, and a lot of times you can just turn the engine over with the spark plugs removed, and you'll watch the water will just shoot out of there like a jet. Just do that until you don't see any more water, coming out of the cylinder, and then usually let it sit for a few minutes, and then put the spark plug back in place, and it honestly, it should be good. I've done it personally myself a couple times. But and the reason why you want to remove that spark plug is if water does flood the cylinder and you go to start it up, if the engine does fire off and start, you're going to probably bend a rod easily or do even more severe damage. So if you've sunk one down to the point where water has entered the cylinder, that's definitely what you want to do. Let's see. All right, for another question from Laughing Dog, it says, do you need to lubricate the front/rear wheel axles on motorbikes? I've been told to use Burley waterproof grease. Yes, it's a good idea to grease them, but it's mainly just so they can come back out easier, because what happens is, corrosion will build up in those axles. And I personally would rather use like a anti-corrosive, I think Permatex makes some. There's a bunch of different companies out there that make a NEC's compound. In my opinion, and in my, what I've witnessed and everything, that's the best stuff to use is some kind of NEC's. Because the oil, it can dissipate out of there, but the NEC's, it's a little bit thicker stuff and it likes to hang tight a lot better. Another question from Trenton. He says, can you guys make a video on how to make a custom fuel map on a CDI for a KX450R. I know it won't be useful for a bunch of people. That's some stuff that it's pretty tricky because if the information is interpreted differently for each unit, that could cause some severe engine damage. When you start messing with fuel maps and ignition timing, we can ask our team and see what they think about it. We can definitely let you know. But I don't know if it'd be something that I would personally do myself. It just really depends on your comfort level with it. Go back up, make sure I didn't miss any questions. Thank you, Trenton. I'm glad we were able to help you out in any way. All right, guys. Well, that's about out of time for us today. I just want to say thank you for dropping in and saying hello, and I hope I, was able to answer the questions for you guys to the best of my ability, anyways. I just want to say, if you are a customer, thank you for shopping with us at Partzilla. You make all of this possible. Hope you have a good. Can't talk. Hope you guys have a good night and a wonderful weekend, and hopefully me and John both will see you next week. Take care.